Welcome everybody to What to Expect When We're Inspecting. This is a great presentation for not just new realtors, but also interested realtors. People always seem to learn something as we go along. Your instructor today is Joe DeLaurentis from Tiger Home and Building Inspections. He's been a licensed home inspector for over 26 years. He holds his supervisory pest control license to do the wood destroying insect inspection during the home inspection process. He's a member of American Society of Home Inspectors. He's also certified for commercial building inspections and has a background and a specialty in new construction, anything that is the latest innovations. If you have questions about that, we're always a great resource. He loves to talk new construction. And he, of course, also manages and trains our inspection staff. So if you're not familiar with Tiger, we're a Connecticut family business since 1992. We're celebrating our 30th year this year. So we're really excited about that. We offer commercial and residential inspections statewide in Connecticut and in all the bordering towns of New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. We do inspections 7 days a week because you're all out there working 7 days a week. A couple other things that make us unique. All of our inspection staff has the wood destroying insect certification, and that is included free with all of your inspections. We also offer radon testing with electronic monitors, well water testing, and mold assessments and testing. If you work with one of our inspectors and you like that inspector and you want that to be kind of your guy, feel free to request them. We also have inspectors with different specialties. So if there's a particular property, you can see here we have a HUD consultant for renovation. We have commercial specialties, antique homes, and more. So before we get started, I just want to let you know, because it's our 30th anniversary, we're running a great promotion, $30 off the home inspection and $30 off a radon and air test. We're going to be running this through the end of the year. You can find our QR code in your offices on our brochures, on different materials, or you can always go directly to our website for our most recent promotion. It's right across the top of the homepage. So follow us on social. We are going to choose our raffle winner today. So if you're not following us on Instagram, we're at Tiger Home Building Inspections, or if you are already following us, post something about this class within the next 55 minutes. And Sue Fasciani, who is also on this presentation with us, she is going to choose a raffle winner. She will also be reading any of your questions that you have, so please chat in your questions throughout the class. We will take periodic breaks, read those out loud, and Joe will answer them for us.
Great, thank you, Kara.
Go ahead, I just said take it away, Joe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Gotcha. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the intro. Kara, we'll touch briefly. We've all been living with the pandemic long enough that I don't need to repeat too much of COVID inspection procedures. However, some simple reminders there. The basics: what is a home inspection? Where does the definition come from? Reference to our Connecticut standards of practice. A little bit of in there, why do home inspectors use this phraseology as it may be in their reports and verbal explanations? What is required to be included in a home inspection from the state of Connecticut? And preparing for inspection day, this is a great takeaway for you. How do you get your buyers, sellers ready for inspection day? And then tips for your clients to select a home inspection company. Our mission throughout the pandemic has been to keep clients, you all as realtors, as well as our staff, safe and comfortable. That also includes sellers in the process. So we have varying requests still today from some sellers as to how many people come in the house. Can we stack everything together on 1 or 2 visits, depending if there's radon? Wearing masks and such like that. We continue to provide our staff with the appropriate personal protection equipment, and our company policy has essentially been go into the inspection with an open mind, ask people what their preferences are for wearing masks or other, and then of course comply to those things. We want to keep sellers continually open to allowing inspections, showings, and things like that. Why does your client need a home inspection? Somewhat basic here, but essentially the service was created so that they have a full understanding of what they're buying. They can make an informed decision. You'll see through conversation that that can include these significant defects that may or may not come up, as well as some understanding of how systems in the house work, planning for future upgrades. The state does require us to inform them of components that are at or near the end of their service life, effectively, understanding that they may need to save some money for that furnace or roof or some such as a major component. Managing those expectations is very important. No home is perfect, but that doesn't mean it might not be the perfect home for that buyer. We work with clients that are looking for everything from turnkey, right? Nothing wrong with the house, to others who are definitely looking for that fixer-upper, whether it's a little sweat equity, as they say, or it's a contractor looking to perhaps remodel a house to then resell it. So it's important to set these expectations with clients. My slide is frozen here. There we go. Managing those expectations can be as easy as forewarning clients what to expect. And again, that may be your buyers or your sellers, so that they know things about the inspection. What's the inspector going to be telling them? Do they need to be concerned about every little maintenance tip, or are we looking for the more important components and/or concerns? Home inspection definition comes from the state of Connecticut. It's part of our licensing through the Department of Consumer Protection. ASHI is a more prominent national organization as well. You may also hear of InterNACHI, which is another one. They also have standards of practice that are pretty close to line with Connecticut's. Connecticut references a visual examination and are like home inspections and glorify them a little. We are not going to pull the homes on homes and start cutting into people's homes in order to investigate these things. As you all know, that's way different than what we're allowed to do in a seller's property. We describe the conditions that we see on the day of inspection. The history of licensing goes back to the early 2000s. Before that, we had great variation in our industry, everything from handwritten notepad with no form set or guidance to an engineer's report delivered 2 weeks after an inspection with a long narrative. This licensing established a uniform set of standards for us. They are required to be provided to every client before the inspection. Ours at Tiger are emailed to clients along with our agreement contract and statement of the services that they ordered ahead of time for review. One of the bullets there is the most important. The real role is to identify significantly deficient components. Some of the subsequent things that have come out of the service is that maintenance and introduction to how a home works. And we tend to gauge that by the interest of our clients. I'm going to run through some of these components of a home rather quickly. And when we get to the questions, if anyone wants more detail on them, some of them are a bit obvious. We do run through structural components, the accessible areas of foundations and framing areas. The last bullet is important. We're required to describe the methods used to access or inspect some of these areas. In other words, more importantly, what can't we get to? So take, for instance, a crawl space that we couldn't get into. We have to inform our clients that they need to take other action perhaps to get in there. Exteriors and roofing, typically these components, their primary intent is to prevent the elements from getting at the building. So wall coverings, trims, flashings, roof covering, always paramount for people. Chimneys tend to be problematic. As a homeowner, most people are not paying attention to what's going on up at the top of their chimney. And of course, other things like decks, entry porches, and the like. Plumbing systems, this is a good one as far as managing expectations for your sellers. let them know that the home inspection process is quite invasive. We have more and more people working from home, therefore staying home as a seller when an inspection is being conducted. And it can be a little difficult to listen to someone going through the entire house and running every water fixture, filling that big giant jetted tub in the primary bathroom, things like that. So that's an easy one to kind of calm a seller and let them be aware of what's going to go through. After that, we also look at fuel distribution. Sumps and the pumps that go along with them are included in the plumbing section, but tend to relate more to basement water entry. The last bullet is important. The state does not require inspection of well equipment. They only require a description of what components are on site. This is important because your clients may have a well, they may be very concerned about the well, so they may choose to conduct some further testing. And towards the end, we get into well water sampling. We'll also talk about our functional flow test, which Tiger offers as an alternative to not having anything done. Electrical, we start outside at the service entry. How does power get to the building? And then how is it distributed throughout? Of course, the wiring and such. You'll see us test at least a representative number of fixtures, switches, outlets, etc. The state uses that term because they recognize that we're not going to move all the furniture, every bit of storage and such to get to every outlet. That should not be misconstrued to be reduced, in my opinion, down to just doing the one per room that's required. Frankly, I think you should get to, and our Tiger policy is to get to every outlet, switch, et cetera, that we can access to test it. Heating systems, cooling systems, of course, we operate those systems. You may have some deficiencies seasonally. It's also important to understand that the state does not expect inspection of interiors of chimneys or flues, so we're not dismantling the venting for heating appliances. Additionally, a common question that comes up is adequacy or sizing of a system and balancing, how even is that heat flow on a forced air system throughout a house. All of these things require a lot more diagnostics than is required for a home inspection. Insulation areas, vapor retarders, all important information. We're going to typically alert our clients to what's there, or if what's there is damaged, missing, etc. It is not an energy audit that's going to test the whole home energy efficiency or blower doors and make recommendations to bring everything up to current energy standards. Interiors, it seems quite repetitive when people are watching a home inspection. We're looking at all of those electrical outlets, operating all of the windows in the house. Yes, some of these can be simpler type items, a window that doesn't work right, or locked hardware that's not functioning. But really why we sample all of them is to try to see is there a bigger problem? Is there a repetitive issue? Are we leaning towards the fact that these older windows have so many issues that maybe it's not restoring them? That's the best course. Perhaps the client should look at window replacement budgeting. Kitchen appliances are exempt from the standard of practice in Connecticut. However, you will see some variation in the market. We at Tiger have chosen to inspect those that are permanently installed appliances. That includes cooking appliances, ovens, cooktops, ventilation for those, installed microwaves. We do not inspect laundry equipment or refrigeration, so be aware of as well. Fuel burning appliances, we will inspect wood stoves, pellet stoves, other gas stoves, and fireplaces themselves. Seems obvious, but we are at least a few times a year requested in the winter to ignite those and test them. Certainly not something we can do with wood fireplaces. Of course, if there's a remote available or controls for a gas appliance, we would certainly be able to light those. And Karen mentioned the wood destroying insect inspection. This is not required as part of a standard home inspection. Be careful of people that say something like, yes, I'll look around for them, but I can't provide the appropriate paperwork. This tends to be a little bit gray when push comes to shove. Perhaps someone needs the National Pest Control form, which must be filled out by someone with the pest control license for their lender. And this is where you get day before closing concerns that come up. So at Tiger, as Kara mentioned, we have licensed personnel to provide the wood destroying insect report with every home inspection. It's included in our fee. So what about reporting? Well, we believe verbally we should explain and direct clients, as well as in the written report, to correct or monitor a situation, describe some simple maintenance tasks to people. When needed, the state recognizes and states that you should suggest further evaluation by a contractor, a tradesperson, a specialist, perhaps, in order to determine the extent of a concern, the scope of work to repair it, perhaps, and any pricing. It's always important that people attend. They get much more value out of their inspection process if they do so. Any questions, Kara or Sue? Who's doing questions? Sue?
I'm doing questions. Thanks, Joe. I have one that just popped up. Yep. And I have two that came to me separately. Sometimes you see orange or black lines on the walls. What does that, in the basement, what does that mean?
In a basement.
Orange or black lines on the walls, what does that mean?
If you're referring to stains on the foundation that may start up at the top of the foundation wall, I'm not sure about the black, but with orangey dirt colored, that's typically from during construction when they're backfilling the outside or the inside of the foundation and mud and dirt drip down the walls. If you're referring to black, it's not so much in the basement, but you could have carbon accumulation from soot, maybe a puff back at a furnace, oil appliance. It's kind of hard to give a good answer on that without knowing the circumstances.
Okay, so Heidi, if you want to go ahead and elaborate, that's fine, and then we could get back to that question. Joe, if a mechanical in the house is working, why would inspectors say it's reported past its service life?
The state's standards recommendation is we have to report on something that's at or near the end of its service life and state why. There's a multitude of reasons. If something's working, meaning let's take a heating appliance, I think is your example, it makes heat, it's distributing it. That doesn't mean that it's not aged or near the end of its life. In other words, a 35-year-old furnace where the circulator fan works, but it's noisy and you can tell it's on its way out per se. A burner is working but hasn't been maintained or well serviced. You need to alert your client to understand that after they move in, there's a good chance they may have a problem with this. Additionally, a good reason for it is the first time that appliance is serviced, it's very likely that that service company is going to recommend replacement or maybe significant repairs, depending on the condition and the age of it. And then you're in a little bit of a pickle of why didn't you tell me that this wasn't an older appliance and I should be planning to make an upgrade. So remember that the direction is to the buyer. We're not suggesting that the buyer turn around and ask the seller for a new furnace, frankly. It's really to have people understand the expected useful life of a typical oil or gas-fired furnace is 20 to 25 years. If you're standing there looking at a 30-year-old or even a 25-year-old appliance, the buyer needs to know that there's an upcoming expense there.
Okay. And then do inspectors have to get on a roof to inspect? And if so, what do they do in the winter? If, like if there's snow on it.
Yep, the state standard or any of the National Association standards do not require accessing the roof in any specific means. They do require describing, how you inspected it and the conditions. So in my opinion and at Tiger, Our first effort is to get on a roof. That's not always feasible with the height, the slope, et cetera. Perhaps winter, like you said. The second effort will be to get up to the edge or as many edges of the roof as you can. And the third effort would be to use an alternative like binoculars or perhaps a drone to access those conditions visually and go from there. So to answer your question, there is no requirement that you have to walk on a roof or even how you use a ladder to access a roof to inspect it.
Okay, and then as far as if there's snow on the roof?
If there's snow on the roof, obviously you can't see it, so it would be indicated as inaccessible. I can't speak for others, but at Tiger, we offer a free return inspection in the winter for all exterior components that were inaccessible. Our interest is in helping keeping real estate transactions moving forward, so we'll schedule the first appointment, do as much as we can, and then return to do the exterior as soon as everything is cleared up for no charge.
Okay, great. And I just want to remind everybody, check us out on Instagram or start following us on Instagram. It'll help you with your chances to win that Panera gift card. Go ahead, Joe.
Question for you. I hear birds chirping with my window open. Is that bothering anybody on the audio? Should I close the windows?
Oh, we did hear it. Yeah, we could hear it.
Let me close this window. Excuse me.
Okay. As much as I love listening to birds.
Yeah, I was kind of enjoying, and then I'm like, wow, that's pretty loud as I hear it in the background.
Yeah, thank you.
Access is extremely important. Another good takeaway from the listing side of things, or perhaps the buying side, if you happen to tour a house and you see it's full of storage. Many clients do listen to you all and remove the clutter from the house, and it ends up in basements and garages and such. So things like attic access points, important to make sure that we have access to get in there. Gas pilots are on, remotes for gas fireplaces are available, crawl space entry points, any locked cottages, apartments on properties, multifamily apartment units, things like this. All of these make inspection day go a lot smoother. Time on site is important to everybody involved, clients, sellers, you as realtors. So the smoother path that we have, the more efficiently we can go through without having to ask permission to clean all the storage out of a closet to get in an attic. We just talked about the snow return. Also, remember, air conditioning now is a great time of year. If you're taking listings in the fall, remember to make sure that your clients have their central air conditioning system serviced. There's nothing better if it gets to be too cold when we can't run those in the winter than having a fresh service receipt to provide to a buyer and say, look, we had the system reviewed and serviced. It's working just fine. That'll help you get across any of those older equipment issues as well there. The other things that are not part of a home inspection, but good to also have inspected, or excuse me, serviced before winter, are lawn irrigation systems and pools, so that again, you take the wondering out for the buyer. Some of the limitations that the state recognizes, destructive probing, dismantling of things. You know, if we see a large ceiling stain and we're not sure what the cause is, we're certainly not able to go ahead and cut that drywall open. There may be hidden defects behind some of these things, and representation of future life expectancy, or when absolutely, by time something may fail. The top bullet here is an important one. We're often asked from people on site, usually it's, Uncle Bob, the contractor, about code issues. Remember that a home inspection is not a code inspection, and it really can't be. Imagine trying to sell all of our housing stock and bring it up to current code. The code is intended, the building code is intended for alterations to an existing building or new construction. And that's all that it should be applied to. Insurance policies, home warranties, all provided from different sources and not according to the state, part of a home inspection. They also recognize that piping outside of foundations, general pests, underground systems like oil tanks and such according to the state, are not intended to be part of a home inspection. I talked a little bit about reporting already. We use a summary with our report, both verbally at the end of the on-site inspection and in the written report. The state does require that a written report be provided to be considered a home inspection. So keep that in mind. You'll see some variation, but most of what's in the market is delivered either through website link or by email, and perhaps would include pictures, and some will include the summary. We also, like you from Consumer Protection, have a code of ethics. We are supposed to maintain the reports as confidential unless we get permission to deliver it to other parties. So perhaps, again, preparing for inspection day, have that conversation with your buyer client so they're aware if they want to share reports with you as realtors. Quick example of our report page. There's a rating system in the center. The two highlighted or orange would move things over to the summary area. Those are things that are not functioning properly. They need repairs, replacement, or recommendation for evaluation by a contractor. The narrative to support why things are rated the way they are is in the right-hand column, and the report is effectively broken down into each different section of the building. Another question break. So you got anything?
Nope, all set.
All right. Moving on to optional environmental tests that may go along with a home inspection. Many of the standards, the radon air, the well water, fairly typical. We also offer mold assessment, which we get more and more inquiries about every day due to concerns with indoor air quality. And then some things beyond a home inspection that may require some specialized licensing, like asbestos testing, lead paint testing, septic systems, of course, not something that would be part of a home inspection, and underground fuel tank investigation. Radon, some simple facts about this. And if you're curious, we also on our YouTube page have a 1-hour radon course, and it's also something that we can provide as an office seminar as well. Radon is a gas. We can't smell it, taste it, sense it, etc. Therefore, the only way to test is with an EPA approved device. The EPA has set an action level of 4.0 picocuries. In other words, 4.0 and above. They recommend either long-term testing or mitigation. Testing methods, you may have seen some of these on sites in use. The left side and lower are all passive devices. They are considered accurate if used according to EPA guidelines. However, they don't provide the same level of data as the top right device, which is a continuous radon monitor. We use continuous radon monitors at Tiger so that we can provide good data to our clients. First and foremost, of course, it reads radon levels every hour throughout the extent of the minimum 48-hour test. It also tells us temperature, humidity, barometric pressure changes, and there's a tamper alarm. All of these things can be analyzed when we pick up the device to understand, did we get a good test? Was there an impact from that nor'easter storm that came through? Do we need to leave the device for a longer test and things like that? So the good data, the appropriate data is what's important for using those continuous monitors. Radon mitigation, if you have something that comes in above the level and there's going to be mitigation, this is what you'll see. You may see it when you're showing a property or taking a listing, the piping on the outside of the foundation. Be aware that more and more newer construction will have these systems installed internally, so you may not see them. The only indicator would be the fan that's usually up in an attic or closet area, or the piping that's in the basement. Looks just like a white PVC drain pipe, but it's supposed to be labeled that it's radon mitigation system as well. So you're going to see more and more of those installed ahead of time. Remember, with radon testing, it's important to use certified individuals. Our entire environmental team has to attend a 16-hour course and pass a rather difficult test to get their certification. They also have continuing education, just like all of you, to maintain that certification yearly. This keeps them up to date with the devices, the testing protocols, et cetera, with radon testing. So I find it's more and more important for things like device placement, types of devices used, and using them appropriately to work with certified individuals. We'll run through some well water tests here. The first one, staying with the radon theme, radon in water. Important takeaway here, if you're not familiar with it, the EPA does not have a national level for radon water. Connecticut's Department of Health has created the guideline of 5,000 picocuries per liter. In the Northeast, we have some of the highest areas. Private wells in Connecticut tests averaged around 3,000 picocuries. They use that as the baseline for setting their level. And another important takeaway for this is the Connecticut Department of Health recommends a dual vial sample. If a single vial sample is done, the next step that one should take is to take another sample, not to move to remediation or mitigation. This is extremely important when you see some of the prices to mitigate for radon water. You want to be sure that the testing was done conclusively. Because of this, we moved a long time ago to doing the dual vial sample at first visit. It's the only way that we offer the test so that our clients are getting the appropriate information on the first test and not moving towards a second. Here's that conversation about mitigation for levels that are above the guideline, but on the lower side, perhaps up even to 10,000. You can use granular activated carbon, less formally known as GAC canisters. That's the canister all the way on the right side there. Typical costs are less than $2,000. However, they do require yearly replacement of those tanks, not for that full fee, but basically maintaining the tank. Second mitigation method, which is nearly 100% conclusive, and this is where I say it gets very expensive. You can run almost up to $6,000 for an aeration system, also known as bubble up systems. They're very effective. You'll see this black canister in the basement and an aeration system. As well as a secondary pump to repressurize the water. So the systems do get a little bit involved. Next, we have our potability test. This is probably the most common water test that's done historically. We've always done this one. Includes bacteria and the nitrate nitrogen. Those are the most important too, because they can deem the water unsafe for drinking if they're not if they're high or present. The others are water quality type items, and certainly many people treat for these. You know, in the shoreline areas or a lot of Connecticut, frankly, we have hard water, minerals in water and such, so it's not uncommon to see a well system with treatment on it. If you're not working in an environment with wells all the time, remember when you have clients that haven't had a well, they may see a treatment system and become concerned that again, setting them up, preparing them for the inspection, it's important for them to understand wells are very common in Connecticut and treatment systems are very common on the wells. It does not indicate a problem per se. Some other water tests we have: pesticides, volatile organic chemicals are two examples of site-specific tests. People would do those tests perhaps in pesticides if you were near a golf course or a farm, maybe an orchard or some such, or land that was converted from one of those to a subdivision maybe. The VOCs, again, site-specific, proximity to some source, whether it's industrial, manufacturing, maybe an on-site oil tank even as well. My neighborhood is near an old abandoned rail bed, and there are some issues with VOCs remaining as well. Arsenic and uranium, you've probably heard about either in the media or through client interest in testing. The State Department of Health in Connecticut recommends testing for arsenic and uranium at the time of a real estate transaction, as well as when a new well is drilled. So that has become more important based on a U.S. Geological Survey that then the Connecticut Department of Health recognized the potential for elevated levels throughout the state of Connecticut. Earlier, I referenced the functional flow test. Through our home inspection, although we're not required to inspect the well system, we do inspect it partially to look at the components that are on site. Those clients that are interested in something more, we offer this functional flow test. And essentially, we'll review the equipment on site in a little more in depth than on a standard home inspection, report generally the condition and the performance of the well. Once we look at the equipment, see what's there, see how it's functioning by running water throughout the house, checking household pressures and usage with multiple fixtures and things. We'll then run the water for another 45 minutes outside and get gallons per minute and pressure readings to determine if there's, appropriate water for what we consider normal household usage. Remember that these tests are different. This test is different than a yield or recovery test. Yield tests are done when a new well is drilled. Recovery tests require removing the top of the well, measuring how much water is in it, draining it down, and then seeing how fast it physically recovers. We do not get involved in that for many reasons when we do a functional flow test. I would definitely advise people who have either concerns because maybe the seller disclosed something or just never had a well and they're extremely concerned to take the next step and get a well company to do a recovery test if for some reason there's more of a concern. Moving on to mold in homes. Some 10 years plus ago, we were getting consistent requests for mold testing and referring those. Never really wanted to be in the mold assessment or testing business, but by nature of continued requests and the knowledge that we already had about homes, we've created a mold assessment. In order for mold to occur in a house, you need moisture. And this is really the key to all of this. That can be in the form of a leaking roof, plumbing issues, damp basements, improperly vented appliances, even as you can see some of these in these diagrams. And frankly, we as occupants and the way we use houses make a lot of moisture in a house. We are continually through construction changing sealing and insulation and construction methods. And sometimes, frankly, it's trial and error. We see that there's more moisture accumulation. So we're dealing with a lot of mechanical ventilation now in construction and things like that. Once we combine that moisture with an organic material that may be wood, wallboard, anything that mold can grow on after the moisture saturates it, you get the mold growth. And from there, what impacts us is the spores that are released into the air. So that's why you see mold testing, including indoor air samples. Who needs a mold assessment? We get requests for this from a variety of clients. Some of those may have had a prior issue in their home with a water entry event or some such. Many of them simply have allergies or their family members are allergic. There may be increased sensitivity groups. Those with respiratory or pulmonary issues tend to fall into increased risk, and they may want to do some testing of their properties as well. Outside of real estate, we've seen increased interest, and we've been working with more and more homeowners on their own indoor air quality. They've been living there a while. Maybe now they're home office in the basement or some such, and they're continually sneezing, affected by indoor air quality. So seeing more requests for that. So what we did to develop our mold assessment, we noticed in the industry there were remediators who were doing some testing Most of them came from an insurance or water cleanup kind of environment, and may have had some dramatically expensive solutions to mold problems. Others, we saw some simple sampling being done by home inspection competitors. So we wanted to include a thorough assessment of the house, including looking for mold, of course, but any moisture sources, some advanced tools. We use infrared cameras to find temperature anomalies that can lead to moisture issues. We follow up with checking those areas with a moisture meter, and going through the house as part of our site inspection. From there, we make recommendations to clients based on their input or interview as to their concerns, as well as what we found, to talk about where they would like to sample. Do they want a surface sample of some visible mold? Do they want air samples beyond the normal living spaces, perhaps in a specific bedroom or some such? Those samples are then analyzed by the laboratory. When they come back, rather than sending our clients this very confusing and sometimes quite scary lab report alone, our mold assessment staff takes that report, looks at it, compares it to what they saw on site, draws some conclusions. Okay, we need some standard homeowner cleanup at a small amount of mold that was identified, didn't cause, as an example, some high levels on the lab results. Or perhaps they may need to go to a remediator, do something that came back on the higher side and or was recognized on site. All that goes into a report explaining and directing them to what their next steps may be. And in some cases, if they chose some minimal sampling amounts, those next steps may in fact be more testing of the house to try to dial in what's the source and where are the problems. Very, very commonly, we're seeing moisture accumulation from condensation in attics, and of course the opposite in basements. This time of year, with that run of high humidity that we had, we tend to see the moisture accumulating there in the summertime, attics in the wintertime. Moving past mold to some of these other tests that we don't do as home inspectors. Asbestos testing or inspection in Connecticut requires an asbestos abatement license. Unfortunately, there is nothing between A and B, and the abatement license is quite difficult to get. So you need to get a licensed abatement company to do any sampling or confirmation of asbestos materials. Lead paint, of course, can be tested. Septic systems, we'll see a quick image there to help you understand what they're doing. And then, of course, underground fuel tanks. Some samples of asbestos, you most commonly see it in some of this pipe insulation remaining. We'll see another image of vermiculite insulation, but built prior to 1978, so easy to remember based on your lead paint disclosure date as well. Can be in floor and ceiling tiles, heating insulation, heating appliances, and things like that. There's that vermiculite. Zonalite, if you're able to write that website down, zonaliteatticinsulation.com. I can't confirm it, but there may still be some money in that class action lawsuit to assist in vermiculite abatement. We see this most commonly in attics, but often in walls as well. It's a loose insulation that would have been installed. Sometimes not possible or difficult to see because it's been insulated over with loose insulation, like a loose fiberglass or even fiberglass batt insulation. So something to be aware of there. That's an example of a lead paint testing device called X-ray fluorescence. It can read levels of paint and determine lead paint presence. We don't see too many people testing for lead paint. And in some occasions, maybe they're going to be doing some remodeling and they want to test before doing that. Important takeaways for clients are the ages here, heaviest in the 40s to 60s. 1978 is when they lowered the content allowed in paint and lead paint there. Their disclosure does a great job of informing people. And frankly, when asked, if you're buying a house built before 78, you should be aware of the potential presence take necessary precautions. There's great information from the EPA. You know, if you're doing work yourself, and if you're hiring contractors, they are required to be certified to work on older buildings as well. Septic systems, what are they looking for when the truck's out in the yard there? You'll see they're looking for that tank. The 2 compartments are the cleanouts to get into that tank in the image on the screen. They also inspect the line that runs from the house to the tank to make sure they're getting good drainage to the tank, and then levels in the tank to make sure that everything is leaving the tank appropriately. When you hear conversation about baffles, those are intended to, I'm sorry to gross you out near lunchtime, keep the solids in the tank and let the effluent leave and go out to that leaching system. If you hear conversation about a distribution box, that would be right next to the tank where the pipe splits to 2 runs. That's where you have a distribution box that can get clogged. And then, of course, the leaching system is underground, not usually accessible, only able to be viewed with a camera, which a lot of septic inspectors are using now as well. Underground fuel tanks, by the state's definition of a home inspection, we're not required to inspect for them. We may see some indicators of a prior oil tank and recommend to our clients to do some homework, find out from the sellers if they have, you know, proof of removal or if there was ever anything on site. Sometimes you need to go back to the fuel delivery companies that have been servicing the house, or perhaps the local fire marshal. That's usually the local authority that kept track of that. Very difficult with our small towns in Connecticut to have records and find out, you know, who did what when, but that's the best course of business there. There's no state regulations for tanks less than 2,000 gallons. So most of our residential stuff does not have to be removed. However, lenders and or closing attorneys most commonly are going to suggest, you know, proof of removal or abandonment, and or getting it done beforehand. Tank life varies dramatically by site conditions. Was it put into moist, damp soil? Was that tank scarred at all with the excavator when it went out? What kind of quality of the tank was put in? And we're referring to steel tanks that are the concern. You can actually still install a newer concrete tank. They have all kinds of safety precautions in place and such. Not commonly done, but you may run into some of that as well. I'll speak towards abandonment quickly. You are allowed to abandon, but it has to be done appropriately. In other words, the tank still has to be opened up, cleaned out, and appropriately filled. This is usually only done when there's an access issue. We can't get a machine in for some reason to a location. Any questions, Sue?
Yes, I have a couple. I'll talk about mold first. If mold is outside, how can you tell that the mold in the house isn't just from outside?
Great question. So any mold air sampling should be done with a comparison. So we always take an outside control sample, same day, same time, obviously, and then any interior sampling is compared to that sample. We also, best case testing has the house closed up, meaning windows and doors other than normal entry and exit, just like radon, for 12 hours before mold sampling is done.
Okay. Is a mold assessment a part of the general inspection, or is this an additional?
It's an additional service. Another great question. Sorry, I ran past that. Because it's a different set of certification and different process. We do have a separate fee for it. That fee starts at $425 and includes 2 samples. And then additional samples are charged independently based on the client's choice of how many they want to do.
Okay. That's it for now, actually.
Great, thank you. Prices of home inspections, you will see not huge variation, but some variation in the market. Key takeaways for clients is what's included Often a big variable is whether or not the wood destroying insect or termite inspection is included. But generally it depends on the size of the house, perhaps the age of the house, and any additional, significant outbuildings, barns, things like that, apartments on site, and what have you. Average fees should be in the 500 to 700 range. You'll see some variation on wood destroying insect charges. There's some ranges there from when we queried the market on radon testing, water testing, and there's your mold assessment fees as well. Preparing for inspection day. I've touched on this a little bit throughout, but prepare your clients to attend as best as we can in today's world without distractions. They should be prepared with any questions or concerns. That's how we start every inspection, is talking to our clients about what they've seen, what their specific concerns might be. Plan on anywhere from 2 to 4 hours on site based on, obviously size and complexity of the house itself. And remember to prepare your sellers as well. Makes things a lot easier when the seller is not there. However, many people have to be if they're going to be around. Important for them to understand that, one of the biggest shocks we see is they don't often know that the buyers might be coming. The buyers might be bringing their parents, kids, friends, etc., their decorator, their contractor. So prepare your sellers just as much as your buyers for what may happen on inspection day. Choosing a home inspector, important to understand that inspectors should be fully licensed. There is an intern program in Connecticut required for us to get our licenses. That's 100 inspections done under a supervisor. And then from there, once you satisfy that, you can take the National Home Inspection exam and move on to get your license. Unfortunately, the state of Connecticut left out any sort of cap on the time frame to do that. So you're actually allowed to run a business, own a business for an unlimited amount of time under that intern permit. Therefore, it's important to understand for people to know that they should hire a licensed inspector, fully licensed. Insurance is not required in the state of Connecticut for home inspectors. This is an important differentiation. As a responsible business, we carry errors and omissions, liability insurance, and because we have employees, workers' compensation insurance. So this is also important from the listing perspective. You want to know that people coming on your properties have insurance should something go wrong. Could be something simple, something breaks in the house, or the wind blows the ladder off the roof onto the seller's car. This is all important protection to prevent headaches for all parties involved. Customer service, our office staff is available 8 to 8 daily, 8 to 6 on Saturdays, 10 to 2 on Sundays. We're there to schedule appointments, answer questions, deliver copies of reports, etc. All of our own office staff in Connecticut, no answering services or anything else like that as well. So here to help your clients. We are very familiar with the standards of practice. We do exceed them in many instances and are sure to adhere to them for our clients. As Kara mentioned, it's our 30th year in business, so it's important for clients to understand reputation of inspections, credentials, inspectors' credentials, and of course, experience. With 22 inspectors on the road and at our continual training meetings, we get a lot of feedback from the inspectors on things they've seen. All of our guys can grow from those experiences. Some helpful documents we'll send out to all of you. Inspection day preparation, some of the reminders of things we spoke about to give to your clients, both buyers and sellers, and another document for scheduling and inspection, things they should have prepared as well. My name's Joe DeLaurentis. My contact email is on the screen, as well as Kara Golden's and Sue Fasciani's. They are our marketing team at Tiger.
We have a couple more questions, Joe.
Yeah.
How much is the cost of a standard inspection for an old house? like from the 1900s with almost 2,000 square feet?
We work off of a computer program, like a chart effectively. So I'm going to give you a range, 2,000 square feet, 1900 age, probably in the $600 to $700 range. I might be a little high on that, but I didn't want to go low.
Okay, and you can always call the office and get a quote if you'd like. Our office staff is available. If you want to give them the address, they can give you a quote. So
Yeah.
please feel free to do that. You can call that 1-800 number you're seeing on the screen right now. And here's another question. How would you know if your inspector is fully licensed or is an intern?
Two ways. One is the Department of Consumer Protection has a very easy license lookup program. And secondly, because we're required to give a copy of the standards of practice for every inspection, there are two places to sign that. One is as a licensed inspector with an HOI number, and the other is as an intern. So if they sign as an intern and give an intern number, that's an easy indicator.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone to please feel free to go on Instagram and follow us, like us on Facebook, and you can also watch us on YouTube by going to our channel, Tiger Home and Building Inspections. And I'd like to announce our winner for the Panera gift card is Heidi. Thank you so much for participating. And we, both Kara and I are always available to answer any questions anytime. So please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you out there in the field. Have a great day.